Welcome to Retro Needy. We have a mighty need for nostalgia from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. Today we're going to be looking at 10 retro items that most of us no longer use. If you remember using any of these, share it with us in the comments. Number 10. The original Game Boy. In 1989, Nintendo introduced Game Boy to the world. With the variety of games available, long battery life using only 4 AA batteries, you could get almost 20 hours of playtime. Its simple design and easy-to-use layout made it very beginner-friendly. Nintendo would continue to manufacture Game Boys throughout the 90s and early 2000s, until they were replaced by the dual-screen Nintendo DS handheld systems in 2004. Number 9. Pagers, or beepers. Prior to cell phone instant messaging, anyone that needed to be contacted on the go had a pager, also referred to as a beeper. In the 80s and 90s is when pagers were at their peak, and many jobs like businessmen, police, EMT, construction workers, delivery services, and others would rely on pagers to communicate at their job. Today, pagers are not as widely used, but some hospitals still use them since cell phone services tend to be spotty in places. Number 8. Floppy disks. Kids today will never know why the save button in many of today's applications looks the way it does. But that used to be the best way to save what you were working on a computer. Developed in the 1960s as 8-inch floppy disks, revised in the 1970s to be 5¼ inch, and ultimately to their final form as the 3.5-inch floppies that met their demise in 2011. Number 7. Dial-up internet.
You've got mail.
Dial-up internet became widely available in households in the early 90s. You'd have to tie up your phone line to be able to get on the internet. When someone tried to call, they'd get a busy signal, and if someone else in your house picked up the phone, they were met with a horrible noise, and whoever was online would possibly be knocked off. Today, dial-up internet apparently still exists, but the only people that have it are the folks that live out in the middle of nowhere land, where fiber, cable, or even DSL is not available. Number 6. Analog and CRT televisions. Back in the day, TV was completely different. Majority of people had CRT or cathode ray tube TVs, hence why the TV was sometimes called the tube. The way we received channels over the airwaves was called analog TV. Rabbit ears would pick up the airwave signals, which would sometimes be fuzzy due to interference. By June 2009, analog TV was phased out in the US and replaced by digital TV. Consumers who still had analog TV tuners needed to buy a digital television adapter, also known as a converter box, in order for their TVs to be able to take the new digital signals and convert them to analog signals so that they could still watch channels on their TV. Number 5. Audio cassette. 8-track tapes were popular in the late 60s and through the 70s. But it was the introduction of the Sony Walkman in 1980 that played a big role with the compact audio cassette being consumers' primary source of pre-recorded music. And even in the 90s with the introduction of CDs, cassette tapes were still in the game since cars still had tape decks. They were easy to record on, used in answering machines, and making mixtapes was just flat out fun. Number 4. VHS and VCR. Video home systems, VHS, and video cassette recorders, VCRs, were the dominant form of home video in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. However, in order to preserve a high-quality video, only about 2 hours could be recorded on one VHS, so movies like Gone with the Wind and Titanic were split into 2 VHS copies. Not only did we buy movies on VHS, but prior to having TiVo or streaming media, recording shows you didn't want to miss was best done by setting the VCR on a timer to record your favorite TV show. Number 3. Payphones. Payphones were first widely available in the early 1900s. By 1960, the Bell system had installed its 1 millionth payphone, but the 80s and 90s saw the payphone as a regular part of life. Everyone knew that a collect call was expensive, and that spare change could sometimes be found in payphones. Plus, Bill and Ted wouldn't have been able to travel through time without a payphone booth. Today, seeing a payphone in public is a rare sight. In fact, in May of 2022, New York City removed their last freestanding phone booth. Number 2. Typewriters. In 1868, Christopher Latham Sholes patented the first practical typewriter, but it only wrote in capital letters. But by the 1970s, the typewriter had evolved to be electronic, and secretaries nationwide all knew how to use one. But with the rise of the internet and PCs being more affordable, by the early 2000s, typewriters were seeing a decline, and by 2012, they basically became obsolete. Number 1. Phone books. Phone books were first published in 1878 in New Haven, Connecticut, and they only included about 50 people. In the 80s and 90s, we all knew of the white and yellow pages. When you needed to find a number for a business, look at the yellow pages. Or if you wanted to look for your crush's phone number and call them up, you'd most likely look them up in the white pages. Phone books officially became obsolete in 2012 after they kept being criticized as a waste of paper. Well, that was our list. Are there any other retro things that you no longer use? Share in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you the next time that you are retro needy.